one and all. Welcome to another edition of Conversation Collage, coming to you from a very cold Wenatchee, Washington, U.S. of A. On this, as we record this, it is the day after Christmas. Ken Johannesson here, hoping you had a very fine, joyous, peaceful, quiet Christmas. Hope Santa was good to you and you remembered a little bit of why we celebrate. And, you know, not only Christmas, but it is Hanukkah as well for those of the Jewish faith, so don't want to exclude. And, I guess as I said on Facebook to my Facebook friends, a happy and merry whatever you celebrate to all. All right? Santa was good to me. I was over at my sister's place, which is about 100 miles away from here, and her tribe, as I call them, her son, her daughter, her daughter's daughter, and her daughter's daughter's daughter. Yeah, it was a little bit of a menagerie. All told, there was 8 of us on Christmas Eve. We opened our presents on Christmas Eve in our household, and we did quite well. It was an interesting, maybe I'll tell you a little bit about it a little later on. Let's talk about what we've got as far as who we're going to be talking to this time. There's a new report dealing with the Year in Sports. It's actually called the Year in Sport Report, and it talks about fitness, athletic reports, athletic performance, and what people are doing out there in terms of staying fit. All right, we'll talk with a long-distance runner about that, all right? And a little later on, he's trying to say, we will talk to you Pythons, you Python fans, Monty Python. A book came out earlier this year, which is actually this year is the 50th anniversary of Monty Python's Flying Circus. And we talked with David Morgan, who is a producer at CBS for Sunday Morning, and he has updated his book called Monty Python Speaks, which is an oral history of Monty Python, and we'll talk about that a little later on. First off, let's dive into the year in sports. There's a group or a firm called Strava, Strava, and they have just released their Year in Sport report. It is a data report that looks at fitness and athletic performance trends from 2019. And to talk about that, we have 5-time national trail running champion and Strava running coach, Megan Roche. Megan, where are you?
I am coming from Denver, Colorado.
Ah, that's home base for you, isn't it?
It is home base for me.
Good.
Actually down in Boulder, but
right.
For a little trip to Denver.
Right. Boulder. I saw that. I did a little checking on you, and it said Boulder on some things there. So is that Denver must be good. Boulder must be good running country.
Boulder is fantastic running country, both in terms of the altitude. It's kind of the ideal elevation for training, but also trails. The mountains and trails there are beautiful. And the community, too. There's so many runners in Boulder.
Okay. Let's get into this here. Strava and its year in sports report. First off, tell me about Strava. What is Strava?
Strava is the world's largest sports participation platform. So on Strava, it's a social fitness network. You can upload your GPS activities. You can take those GPS activities and see different workout metrics and analyses from those activities. And then you can also engage with a community of runners and cyclists and athletes who are doing the sports that they love.
Okay. And they put together this Year in Sport report. How did they do that?
So the Year in Sport report is compiled from 48 million athletes in 195 countries, and these are all athletes who are uploading activities to Strava. And we learned a lot about what inspires athletes, what keeps athletes showing up. We learned about interesting trends in gear in our Year in Sport report. Okay,
so let's get into it. What did you find out? What was the most interesting stuff to you?
What was most interesting to me was the power of community. So at Strava, we found that people who are engaging in group activities compared to solo activities are more likely to go longer distances and be more consistent over time. So, for example, we find that nearly half of our cyclists are uploading group rides, and those rides are going 2 times the distance compared to people who ride alone.
Interesting. And are we talking bicycle rides here? Are we talking runs? What are we talking about there?
That specific stat is from bicycle rides.
Okay.
If you dive into running, what we see is that many runners are early birds. So we see that runners are starting between 6 and 8 a.m. most often on average. And then many runners are also running in groups as well, similar to cyclists.
Interesting. Any big trends that have come about through this report that you're finding?
Yeah, so one thing that we found is the rise in indoor or virtual cycling. So we've seen that virtual reality cycling has nearly tripled since 2016. So this is circumstances where people would be on stationary bikes and would be riding through different courses or competing or training with other people through virtual cycling.
Mm-hmm. Something like, I don't want to use any brand names, but these cycles, these stationary cycles that are, say, done on advertised on TV that you see quite a bit.
Correct.
those type
some
of things.
Controversial advertising is used in some of these indoor cycling trends.
So, did anything surprise you with this report?
What surprised me the most was looking at goal setting and looking at fitness resolution. So this is a topical conversation because we're coming up to New Year's where many people are setting fitness goals.
Sure.
What we've seen is that people are actually not as likely to hold true to those fitness goals over time. We found this date that we refer to as Quitter's Day, where many athletes are less likely to keep up with their fitness resolutions. And we see that date, it's pretty early. So this year we predict the date to be Sunday, January 19th in 2020, where people on average are not going to follow through with their fitness resolutions.
So that's when the fitness stops, huh? That's when they give up, huh?
Unfortunately, yes, and it's very early. January 19th is pretty darn early.
Does that mean that people set their fitness goals too high?
I think it's a combination probably of not setting realistic goals, but I think it really, when it comes down to it, I think it's more the motivation and the consistency. The interesting thing about January 19th itself is that I think it takes 4 weeks for really the enjoyment of exercise to start happening once you start a new exercise routine. And 19 days is not long enough to really get the consistent benefit or the enjoyment benefit of having that routine.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so then how do we go about setting smart, realistic, achievable fitness goals?
So research shows that writing down goals is a great way to stay consistent with them over time. I think going along with the idea of writing down goals, sharing your goals with other people makes you more likely to actually follow through with them. Plus, it creates this fun sense of community as you go about the daily progress of getting towards those goals. Other things are maybe like signing up for a fun race or committing on Strava. We have these Strava challenges where you can challenge yourself in consistency or mileage or distance. And those are different ways that you can measure progress. And you can also create this sense of friendly competition between yourself or perhaps among other Strava users.
It says here, running a marathon in 2020, you might want to check out the Nike Next Percent. Can you tell me about that?
Yes. So the Nike Next Percent shoes are this hot topic on the marathon market.
Oh, these are shoes. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me.
So they're fast shoes that are considered carbon shoes. And on average, athletes are running about 4 to 5% faster right now in these shoes, though that is trending faster and faster as our technology advances.
What is it about these shoes that make people run more or faster or whatever? What's in the shoes?
So the shoes kind of have a spring-like effect with a carbon element in them, and that is making runners run faster in them. Interestingly enough, it's runners across the board are running faster in them. Some runners do benefit from them more than others, depending on their biomechanics, but it truly is the fact that almost all runners across the board will run faster in these Nike Next Percent shoes.
Mm-hmm. Are we seeing, as far as gender goes, men and women, are they both doing better in fitness? Because it says here that global gender parity is coming up.
Yes, we are getting closer to global gender parity. So women cyclists on average are commuting a little bit less than men, so 6.7% less. But we're working our way up from that, and it's been inspiring to see more and more women get into fitness, get into cycling, and even use cycling to commute. Why
does the U.S. still have a ways to go for 17.4% for less for women?
That's a great question, and I think our goal in 2020 is to dive into that. We don't have clear answers on that at the moment. We have some hypotheses, but in 2020 we're definitely going to dive into that.
Mm-hmm, right. I've got just a couple minutes left with you here, Megan. You're a runner. What's the farthest you've run?
The farthest I run is 50 miles. I did a race called the North Face 50 Miler in San Francisco. And in the context of the 50 miles, it included a lot of rocks and roots and hills. And so that's kind of the style of terrain or the style of running that I prefer the most.
What is it about running that gets you going? What is it about running that you like so much?
Ooh, that's a great question. So I love waking up in the morning and knowing that I have a run on a schedule for the day. I think for me, it's a very meditative process. So when I get out and go for a run, I feel like my brain clears. It's like a fresh start to the day. And in that meditative process, I feel like running makes me a better person. It kind of like, it sets the stone for the day. It helps me become motivated to do the other things that I love in life.
For people who don't run, and I don't run because I've never liked running. When I had to run in gym class back when I was in school years ago, it was always an excruciating process for me. And if I tried to run right now, I wouldn't make it down to the end of the block before collapsing. What's the secret? What's the secret to good running?
So I would say absolutely. Running is hard. And I think that until you really develop a consistent routine and build up to it gradually, it stays hard. And so what I encourage for people who are just getting into running is to transition from to really start with like a run walk and then to gradually increase the percentage in which you're running. And that helps the body ease into things. And then it also allows you to stick with that consistency over time. So usually I tell athletes about 4 weeks is the time in which if you stick with running, it starts to become fun at that point. And that's really that transition point.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's just a matter of sticking to it, huh?
Exactly.
Okay. Can we find this report somewhere?
Yes. So the report itself is available on Strava.com, strava.com. And then if you want to access the Year in Sport report, you go to blog.strava.com/press, which is a long URL. But the Strava app is helpful for runners and cyclists and athletes who are looking to upload activities, to engage with the community, and just to be able to understand their metrics as it relates to exercise.
Mm-hmm. Megan, why is it called Strava? What does that signify?
Our founder is Swedish, and so that's where Strava comes from.
Ah, okay.
It means to strive.
Strive. Oh, gotcha. Okay. And now I understand you're a doctor now, huh?
I am. So I recently graduated from medical school, and I'm actually right now doing a PhD in epidemiology, which is essentially a very long word for population health. And the population that I get to work with is athletes, and I feel very lucky to get to work with that population.
Wow. Okay, that's good for you. And should also mention you and your husband have co-written The Happy Runner, so and that's available, I'm sure.
Yes, The Happy Runner distills a lot of what I've talked about today, and then kind of also dives deeper into the philosophy of running and running in the context of a meaningful life.
Mm-hmm, right. Is there a MeganRoche.com somewhere?
There is not. You can find me on Instagram at MegRunsHappy with underscores beneath Meg and Runs and Happy. And I have a coaching website, swaprunning.com, SWAPrunning.com.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Megan, I know I have to let you go, but I thank you for a few minutes out. Happy running and happy holidays to you, and best to you in Boulder, huh?
Thank you so much. Happy holidays to you as well. I really appreciate it.
Dr. Megan Roche got her medical degree from Stanford back in 2018, is completing a PhD in epidemiology and population health at Stanford. And not only that, she's a running expert for Strava, and we caught up with her in Colorado. Conversation Collage continues. As I was saying, it was a very interesting Christmas for yours truly. I went about 100 miles away to be with my sister and her brood, and usually it's kind of calm, and I don't want to say calm. There is a 9-year-old involved in all of this, and now there's a 10-month-old that is celebrating her first Christmas. But usually we have a method to our madness. We have dinner early, about 4 o'clock, and as I said, we celebrate Christmas on Christmas Eve. That's kind of the Norwegian way of doing it. And then we open our presents the night before Christmas. And usually we have an early dinner around 4 o'clock, and then we kind of let the dinner settle. And then around 7:30, we hear a knock on the door. It sounds a little more solid than that, but that is the knock of Santa. And Santa shows up. We don't see Santa actually, but he leaves a bag of presents. And then it's all hands on deck, really. What we do is we